The sun was about to sink under the horizon, and the deserted sky was still the dead gray yellow, as if it was burned by radiation, without even a single silk. I squatted behind a pile of broken steel-reinforced concrete, holding a raw crowbar in my hand, staring at the ruins in front of me. The air is filled with the smell of iron and rot, and occasionally you can hear the motorcycle engine rush of the faraway snatcher, reminding you that this place may become a slaughterhouse at any time. My name is Kane Iron Blade, a scavenger at the 20-year-old, who survives to the present by shattering and avoiding those crazy people. On this trip today, I have to find some worthwhile things, otherwise I can't even change the pressure and drying of the bun when I go back. This ruin is the remains of an old factory. It is a place where there were some high-tech things built before the nuclear war. Now there are only a pile of half-collapsed walls and broken copper irons scattered all over the ground. I have been here a few times and have picked up some circuit boards and screws that can still be used, and sold to repair workers at the market to change some dry food. But today I plan to go deeper, and I heard that there is an underground warehouse deep in the factory, where there may be good goods from the old era hidden. The premise is that you can go in and come out alive. I wiped the sweat from my face and glanced at the rag bag around my waist. There was only half a bottle of water and a small piece of bread that was as hard as a stone. My stomach was already roaring, but I didn't dare to eat it. I had to run away after a while. I could still be quick and easy with my stomach empty. I took a deep breath, held the crowbar tightly, carefully rolled over a pile of collapsed iron racks, and touched the depths of the factory. The gravel under my feet kept making creaking sounds from time to time. Every time I heard it, my heart beat faster, for fear of being surprised by something that shouldn't be surprised. After walking for about 10 minutes, a huge crack appeared in front of me, as if the ground was torn open by something, and it was pitch black below and I couldn't see anything clearly. I squatted down, lifted up a small stone head and threw it down, and heard the echoes that were probably more than 10 meters deep. There is a raw iron ladder on the edge of the crack, which looks barely useful, but it may also be broken as soon as you step on it. I hesitated for a moment, gritted my teeth and decided. The first rule of survival on the wasteland is, don't risk it and wait for death. The iron ladder was indeed not solid. I just stepped on it and squeaked, as if I was about to fall apart at any time. I acted as lightly as possible, moving down step by step. My palms were covered in sweat, and the crowbar was not on my waist, so I was ready to pull it out at any time to deal with the sudden situation. As the ladder reached the end, I stepped on a hard cement floor under my feet. The air became more damp and there was a strange smell that could not be described, like something rotten mixed with motor oil. I took out a swash flashlight from my rag bag and swept it for a few moments, and the faint light barely illuminated the surroundings. This place is like an underground warehouse, full of overturned shelves and broken mechanical parts, and some iron barrels that are unformed by radiation and corrosion are piled in the corners of the wall. I walked forward carefully, my eyes swept across every corner, and tried to find something worthwhile. After walking for a few steps, I suddenly kicked something hard and made a sound. I looked down and almost screamed. It was the skeleton of a mechanical exoskeleton. Who on the waste soil doesn't know about the mechanical exoskeleton? That was the top technology of the old era. It could turn an ordinary person into a battle machine. You could carry hundreds of kilograms of things on it, run faster than a motorcycle, and even withstand a ball. Unfortunately, this good thing has long been destroyed by the scattered overlords and plunderers. There's no chance for scavengers like me to touch them. The exoskeleton in front of me was obviously bad. The breastplate was smashed into pieces, the mechanical structure of the left arm was half broken, and the legs were covered with scratches and burnt marks, as if they had experienced a fierce battle. I squatted down and couldn't help but reach out and touch the cold metal surface, my heart beating as fast as a drum. Although it is damaged, even if it is reeled and sold, it can be replaced for several months. I tried to pry open my breastplate with a crowbar to see if there were any core components inside that could still be used. As a result, as soon as he tried hard, a low buzz sound suddenly came from the breastplate, and then a small display screen lit up, with some incomprehensible symbols jumping on it. I was so scared that I sat on the ground, and my flashlight almost dropped. What's going on? Can this thing still be activated? I swallowed and looked closer. The symbols on the display slowly formed a line of words. The system is being activated, the user is being tested, the identity is not registered, and the authorization is enabled at a time. Before I could react, a low and cold voice came out of the exoskeleton. I am a shadow core, an old age war brain. Who are you? Why did I start my core system? I stood there in a daze, my brain was blank. What's this thing? The exoskeleton that can speak? The sound stopped for a moment, as if thinking about something, and then continued. Kane Iron Blade, the user identity is confirmed at a time. The current equipment has an 87 allure rate, and only basic movement and low power protection are left. Do you have the intention to repair it? Repair? I felt a little moved in my heart. Although I didn't know what this film core was, it sounded like a certain intelligent system. If this exoskeleton can be repaired, I won't have to hide in the wasteland anymore. But the problem is that I can't use screw knives. How can I repair them? I hesitated for a moment and asked, what are the conditions required to repair? I don't have tools or parts. The sound of the movie core answered emotionally, I will provide a basic repair guide, and the materials required can be collected from the surrounding environment. But warning, the repair process will attract potential threats, and it is recommended that you prepare for protection. Potential threat? I felt nervous that the most inseparable thing on the wasteland was the plunderers and mutants. If someone really heard the silence, my little body would not be able to withstand it. But when I think about it, if this exoskeleton can move, even if it only has one function, it will be much stronger than me now relying on a crowbar. I gritted my teeth and said, okay, tell me how to fix it. For the next hour, the Shadow Core used that cold language to guide me step by step. I followed its instructions and searched for some useful screws and wires in the warehouse, and even pried open an old control panel and removed several hard-to-use chips. The repair process was much more difficult than I thought. My fingers were scratched for several times, sweat mixed with dust on my face, but I insisted on gritting my teeth and persevering. Finally, when I connected the last wire, a low horn sound came out of the exoskeleton's breastplate, and a line of words popped up on the display. The basic repair is completed, and the mobile function has been restored to 23%. The sound of the movie core resounded again. Stage user Kane Iron Blade, where's equipment, test function. I was a little tight, but still said it, put the broken parts of the exoskeleton on my body. Although the metal structure on the breastplate and legs is broken, it can be fixed even harder, and it feels so heavy that it cannot be described when worn. I tried to take a step, but the mechanical structure made a creak sound, which helped me lift my legs, which was much stronger than myself. I couldn't help but grin, this thing really works. However, the laughter didn't last for 2 seconds. A low engine sound suddenly came from outside the warehouse, followed by a few rough shouts. Boss, there is a silence below. Someone must be squeezing something. My heart suddenly fell halfway. I was too familiar with this sound, a plunderer. They must have heard the silence of the repair and followed the sound to find it. The sound of the movie core is still so calm. The enemy target was detected, with a quantity of about 5, and it is equipped with light weapons and easy to modify the car. Suggestion: evacuate immediately and avoid frontal conflicts. Retreat? I looked at the dark warehouse around me, and my heart was filled with my mother. The iron ladder is the only exit, and it must be blocked now, so how to withdraw it? I gritted my teeth and asked in a low voice, is there any tricks that can be done? Is this exoskeleton a fighter equipment? The equipment is currently severe and the battle function cannot be activated. The only feasible solution is, use the terrain to hide and wait for the enemy to leave. The answer from the movie core made my heart sink, but there was no other way. I turned off my flashlight, dragged my exoskeleton's heavy body, hid behind a collapsed shelf, and held my breath. The sound outside was getting closer and closer, and the footsteps were mixed with the responsive metal collisions. Several snatchers were calling each other, search quickly. I don't want to stay in this ghost place for too long. My heart was beating like it was about to explode, and I tightened my crowbar in my hand. Although I knew that this thing could not deal with them, it could at least give me a sense of security. At this moment, a rough figure appeared at the entrance of the warehouse, holding a modified scattered gun in his hand and a broken gas mask on his face. He glanced around his eyes and sneered in his mouth, "Who is here? Come out. Otherwise, I will blow you into pieces." I closed behind the shelf and didn't dare to come out. The sound of the shadow course suddenly sounded in my ears, and it was still the cool and hairy verb, "The enemy's visual range has no concealment, and it is recommended to remain calm. If discovered, you can try to use the remaining power of the exoskeleton to perform short-range sprints, but the success rate is only 14%. 14%? This probability is no different from killing." I bit my teeth and flew around my brain, trying to come up with a way to take off my body. At this moment, the plunder suddenly walked towards me, the scattered gun in his hand swayed, and some messy tunes were humming in his mouth. I know, I can't hide anymore. I stood up suddenly, leaned towards the side with the help of the exoskeleton, and tried to traverse the picture behind another shelf. The wizard responded quickly, and Lima shouted, "It's here." Then there was a sound of gunfire, and Zebo rubbed my shoulder and hit the concrete floor, squirting a pile of debris. I felt a burning pain in my shoulders, but I couldn't check it, so I kept running. Chasing. "Don't let this kid run away." There were more and more shouts behind him, and his footsteps were getting closer and closer. I knew I couldn't run far. Although this exoskeleton could help me accelerate, it was too severe and started to make a harsh creak sound in just a few steps, as if it was about to fall apart at any time. The sound of the movie core sounded again. There is a narrow channel on the left side of the front, which can be used to temporarily detour and chase. Turn immediately. I didn't have time to think too much, so I gritted my teeth and rushed to the left, and sure enough, I saw a crack that could barely pass through people. I rushed in, and the sound of guns and cries behind me went a little farther away, but I knew it was only temporary. The plunderers will not give up easily. They will definitely search everywhere and will still find me in the end. I leaned against the cracked wall, gasping for breath, and my heart was in a mess. The just exit escape made me exhausted, and a bunch of warnings popped up on the exoskeleton's display, saying something like "Power loading, it is recommended to turn off the system." I smiled bitterly and closed it. If I close it, I will be finished. "Shadow Core," I said softly, with a little trembling in my voice, "aren't you fighting for the brain? Is there any way to keep me alive?" Its answer was still so cold, "The probability of survival is currently 9%. The only suggestion, find allies or repair equipment, otherwise it will not be able to threaten it." Ally? Where are the allies on the wasteland? Repairing equipment is a way, but where do I find tools and parts? A name suddenly flashed in my brain, Leah Spark. The crazy girl who repaired machinery at the market was of top-notch technology. Although her spleen was like a hot-smelling explosive, she could definitely help me repair this exoskeleton. The problem is that it was a few days away from the market and I had to pass through the plunder's ground plate on the way. I looked at the warning of beating on the exoskeleton, gritted my teeth, and made up my mind, no matter what, live first. The sound of footsteps behind me was approaching again. I took a deep breath, dragged the heavy exoskeleton, and walked towards the depths of the crack. The road ahead is still long, and that's just the beginning. The crack was as dark as ink. I dragged the broken exoskeleton and moved forward step by step. The gravel under my feet kept making a cry sound, which made my heart grow hair. The display of the exoskeleton occasionally flashes, and the red words of warning jump constantly, saying if the power is overloaded, the system will be closed. I gritted my teeth and ignored it and turned off the system. Doesn't that mean waiting for death? Although the call of the survivor behind him was a little far away, they could still hear it. They must have not given up and might be searching for me everywhere. I stopped against the cracked wall, gasped for a few thick breaths, and the place on my shoulders where the quilt had just been rubbed with was so painful, and blood was pouring out, sticking to the broken clothes. I lowered my head and glanced at me. The wound was not deep, but if I didn't deal with it, it would be very numb if I was infected. The most inseparable thing on the waste soil is bacteria and radiation, and even a small injury can kill you. I took out the half bottle of water from the rag bag, gritted my teeth and poured it on the wound, which made me feel cold, and then tore off a corner of my clothes and wrapped it around, barely stopping the bleeding. "Shadow Core," I shouted in a low voice, with a little fatigue in my voice, "where can this road lead to? Don't tell me there is a dead end ahead." The cold sound came up, scanned by the terrain. There are branches around 300 meters ahead of the passage, which may lead to the ground exit. But warning, the passage structure is unstable and there is a risk of collapse. Collapse risk? I smiled bitterly. It's much stronger than being caught by the plunder. Go. I stood up again and continued to move forward with the remaining power of the exoskeleton. The air in the channel became increasingly bitter, and there was a strange smell that could not be described, like rotten things mixed with motor oil, which made people's heads. I gritted my teeth and held back, stared at the front, clenched the crowbar in my hand, and prepared to deal with sudden events at any time. After walking for about 10 minutes, a fork in the road indeed appeared in front of him. The passage on the left looked narrower, and the right was wide open, but the wall was full of cracks, as if it was about to collapse at any time. Which one should I choose? I asked in a low voice. The possibility of the right channel leading to the ground is higher, but the structure is severe. The left channel is more stable, but the destination is unknown. The sound of the Shadow Core is still so cold that I feel a little angry. If you don't know, you won't know. It's stronger than being buried underneath. I muttered and turned to the left. The mechanical legs of the exoskeleton made a creak sound, and every step seemed to challenge my patience. My heart was full of blows, and I was really not bad now. Not long after I walked, the passage suddenly opened. A place like a basement appeared in front of me, full of scattered mechanical parts and broken circuit boards, and a few raw iron barrels were piled in the corner of the wall, and I don't know what was installed. I walked over carefully and knocked on the barrel with a crowbar, but it turned out that there was nothing inside. Just as I was disappointed to continue walking forward, the sound of the moon core suddenly erupted. I detected that there are available repair materials nearby, and it is recommended to collect them. Repairing materials? My eyes lit up, and I lowered my head and glanced at the crack on the ground. Sure enough, I saw several still complete circuit boards and a small bundle of wires. Although they were all quite old, they looked useful. I squatted down tightly and stuffed all the stuff I could into the rag, and I felt a little confident in my heart. With these things, it may be possible to make the exoskeleton feel a little more. How to repair it? I asked. Connect the circuit board into the breastplate control module, and the wire is used to repair the power supply circuit at a time. I will provide specific steps. The genre of the movie core is still so mechanical, but I feel a little relieved. At least this guy won't stop me. I followed its instructions, found a relatively hidden corner and sat down, and started to swell. The repair process was even more numb than before. My fingers were almost ground out of blisters, and my sweat mixed with dust on my face, so my eyes were almost stuck. But I gritted my teeth and finally stuffed the circuit board into the socket of my breastplate. After connecting the last wire, a line of words popped up on the display. The power has recovered to 31%, and the mobile function has been improved. It's done! I couldn't help but grin and tried to stand up. Sure enough, I felt that the exoskeleton's movements were a little smoother. Although it was still heavy, at least it wouldn't fall apart at any time. However, this little victory did not last for a few seconds, and a low sound suddenly came from afar, like a motorcycle engine, followed by a few rough shouts. There are footprints here. That kid must have not run far away. My heart suddenly fell halfway, and the plunder still caught up with him. Their noses are more spiritual than dogs, so they find us soon. What should I do if I do? I lowered my voice and flew in my brain. The enemy is about 200 meters away, and the number is unknown. It is recommended to evacuate immediately and use the repaired movement ability to stop and chase. The movie Nuclear's answer was still so direct, but this time I had nothing to hesitate. Lima stood up and ran towards the depth of the passage. The exoskeleton's help made me run much faster than before, but every step made me hurt my bones. The engine behind me was getting closer and closer, and occasionally I could hear the sound of guns and the sound of the slut hitting the wall. I gritted my teeth and rushed forward. There was only one thought in my brain: live, find Lee a spark, and fix this broken thing. After running for about 10 minutes, a faint light finally appeared in front of me, like an exit to the ground. I was delighted and rushed over quickly. As soon as I climbed out of the passage, I saw dazzling sunlight and a scent of earthy smell. I squinted my eyes and looked down, and found that I was standing by a deserted ruin, surrounded by collapsed buildings and raw iron racks, and the sky far away was still the dead gray yellow. I didn't have time to enjoy the broken scenery, and the engine sounded so close that I could hear their screams. I glanced around and found that there was a path far away leading to a place that looked like a deserted market. Although it was broken, it could at least provide a little cover. I gritted my teeth and dragged the exoskeleton toward it. When I arrived at the market ruins, I hid in a half-collapsed broken house and gasped on the wall. The exoskeleton's display began to light up again, warning that the power is about to be consumed. I was so embarrassed that this thing is not useful. Fortunately, the sound of the culprits was a little too far away. I guess they were still searching near the passage, but I didn't find that I was running here. Shadow Core, I gasped, is there a place nearby that can hide? Or, is there something that can repair you? During the scan, I detected a small settlement about 3 kilometers southeast, and there may be repair resources or potential allies. But warning, this area may be controlled by plunderers or mutant creatures, and the risks are unknown. The sound of the shadow nuclear was still so cold that I felt a little helpless. 3 kilometers. I muttered, looked at the state of the exoskeleton, and the power was less than 10%, and the electricity was estimated to be less than a kilometer. But it won't work if you don't go. Staying here is waiting for death. I carefully poked out from the broken house and began to move southeast after confirming that the plunderers had not chased. I took every step carefully, and the creaking sound of the exoskeleton made me shocked, for fear that this silence would attract people again. After about half an hour of walking, my power was finally exhausted, and the mechanical structure of the exoskeleton was stuck. I could only drag the pile of broken copper wire forward with my own strength. I was so tired like a dog, and my sweat almost soaked my clothes. The sun has sunk, the sky is getting darker, and the nights on the soil are more dangerous than during the day. Both the different creatures and the vanguards like to be out of here. I gritted my teeth and accelerated, and finally saw the settlement mentioned by the Shadow Corps before nightfall, a small piece of shabby campground made of iron leather and rags. A rough guard circle was surrounded by wastelands and spikes, and there were a few firelights and figures in it. I hid far away and watched for a while, and then I got closer carefully after confirming that there was no obvious mark of the plunderer here. When I reached the entrance of the camp, 2 guards wearing broken protective suits lifted the modified step gun in their hands and stared at me with vigilance. Stop. Who are you? What are you here to fuck? I lifted my hands tightly, signaling that I was not mad, and panting, my name is Kane Iron Blade, who is a scavenger. I want to find some help when I pass by. My exoskeleton is damaged, and I want to find someone to repair it, and I can also change some food. The 2 guards glanced at each other. One of them, with a bearded face, looked up and down, and his eyes stopped on the exoskeleton on my body, and a greedy look flashed in his eyes. Exoskeleton? What a good thing. But we are not helping us in vain. You can come in, so I will hand in the passing fare first. My heart sank, knowing that this help is probably not a good thing, but now there is no other choice. I took out a few circuit boards I had previously sucked from my rag bag and said, "That's all, it's worth something, right?" Dahan picked up the circuit board, glanced casually, and hummed, "Please be strong. Come in, don't play with flowers, otherwise you will look good." He snatched his hand and signaled another guard to let go. I walked into the camp with my head down, my heart pounding. The place is not big, with dozens of broken tents and iron leather houses hanging together, and the air is filled with sweat and burnt smell. Several skinny people sat in the fire, looking at me with numb eyes, as if they were not interested in anything. I glanced around and tried to find someone who could repair the exoskeleton. After a few steps, I heard a pointed female voice coming from a distance. "Hey, new. Is that broken exoskeleton yours? Take it and let me see." I turned around and saw a young woman in oily work clothes walking over, her hair tied up in a mess, and she was holding a modified wrench in her hand. She had dark skin, a savvy and slutty look in her eyes, and she was holding a smoke from where she was squeezing. She looked bad, but she told me that this person might be what I was looking for. "Who are you?" I tried to ask. "Leah Spark, the best mechanic in this broken place." She spit it out and looked up and down at my exoskeleton, her eyes full of interest. "Although this thing looks like a waste, it has a good foundation, right? Is it a bad product?" "Say, how could it be bad?" I was delighted, it was indeed her. But I didn't rush to lift the whole plate. The people's hearts were separated from the ground. Who knew if she could really help me? I snatched my head and said, "I'm so bad. I want to repair it. Can you handle it?" Leah hummed, walked to me, knocked on the breastplate of the exoskeleton, heard the metal echo, and said with a brow, "It can be repaired, but it is not cheap." "What can you change? What to eat? Parts? Or something else?" I hesitated for a moment, took out the remaining wires and a small broken chip in my bag, and sent it to her. "That's all, aren't it?" She took a look and curled her lips. "Hard to repair a basic function, but don't expect me to turn it into a fighter machine. Also, what's going on with the system in this thing?" I heard a strange sound just now, as if there was some smart module running. I felt nervous that the existence of the shadow core could not be exposed at will. I couldn't handle it all this woman's bad thoughts. I said with a stern head, "It's nothing, it's just broken, and I'll be upset occasionally. You can do it if you can, just don't care." Leah raised her eyebrows, as if she could see that I was telling me, but she didn't ask much, but she just said to her shoulders, "Okay, with you. Take this broken penis down and put it in my shed. I will repair it tonight and make it more detailed tomorrow. But I warn you, don't play with it, otherwise my wrench will not be too big." I sniffed my voice and found someone who could help. "I know," I murmured in a low voice, "but there's no other choice now, fix it first." Leah brought me to her iron leather shed, which was filled with various broken parts and tools, and there were several modified circuit boards hanging on the wall, which looked quite professional. She asked me to put the exoskeleton on the table, and then I ordered the broken oil lamp of the chicken and started to bulge. I sat aside and watched her skillfully disassemble parts. I was a little impressed. Although this girl was very nice, her handwriting was really good. "Hey," Leah suddenly opened her mouth, not raising her head, "where's your exoskeleton?" Judging from the degree of damage, it seems like she was having sex with someone or being smashed by a heavy weapon. "Wouldn't you cause any trouble with marijuana?" My heart thumped and I said perfunctorily, "It's nothing, it's just passing through a ruin, and it's like that when I get there." She hummed, obviously not believing it, but she didn't ask, but just continued to bury her head in practice. After about an hour, she finally stood up straight and wiped her sweat, saying, "The basic repair is almost done. The power can be restored to about 40%. There is no problem with moving, but the fighting function is still deserted. The parts are not enough. Tomorrow you have to follow me to pick up things in the nearby ruins, otherwise this thing will be used as iron crutches." "Okay," I pointed my head, and I thought it was a little bit in my heart, "Thank you, Leah." "Don't be hurried," she grinned, revealing a bit of uneven teeth. "If you repair it, you have to tell me about this thing, otherwise I'm not sure to leave a guy with unknown origin here." I smiled reluctantly, but I didn't answer, and I started to count in my heart. The secret of movie core cannot be described, but Leah seems to be not simple, and she may help me more, and even figure out what movie core wants to fuck. But the most important thing to be tight at the moment is to survive, repair the exoskeleton, and stay away from the pursuit of the plunder. The night became deeper and deeper, and the firelight in the camp was extinguished, leaving only a few guards patrol. Leah let me sleep in a broken tent next to her shed. Although it was simple, there was at least a place to cover the rain. After I lay down, my brain was still terrible. The sound of the shadow core, the chase of the plunder, and the suspicion of Leah were all stuck together, making me unable to sleep. Shadow core, I shouted in a low voice, what the hell are you? Why did you choose me? Its voice is still so cold. I am the brain of the old war, and the mission is to find a suitable inheritor and fulfill the unscrupulous mission. The specific content, the current authority is insufficient, and I cannot be informed. Sincere? Mission? I murmured, why is it so mysterious when I hear it? The movie core never replied, and it was as silent as if it had never existed. I sighed, closed my eyes, and tried to let myself relax. The sound outside was whirring, and occasionally I could hear the roar of the remote creatures. I knew that the danger of the wasteland was not over, and there was a harder battle to fight next. The night wind shaved over the iron shed on the campground, carrying a pungent iron smell. I lay in the broken tent, my brain was still as ill as a group of hemp lines. The words of the core of the movie, this inheritor and mission, sound like ghost stories told by old men on the wasteland, so mysterious that people can't touch their heads. But no matter how you say it, this thing is now my only reliance. Repairing the exoskeleton and living is the most important thing. It was just dawn, and Leah kicked my tent open with a foot, holding a smoke from my mouth that I didn't know where to get, and the sound was like a blowjob. Get up. Don't be stolen. Today I have to go to the nearby ruins to pick up parts, otherwise your broken exoskeleton will really become a waste. I rubbed my eyes and got up hard. I felt that my bones and my body seemed to be disintegrated, but I couldn't steal it. I followed her out of the camp. The wasteland outside was still as dead as it was. The gray sky was so stressful that people could not breathe. The ruins far away were like a pile of radiated and scorched bones, lyingly poking there. Leah took me toward the east, saying that there was the slaughter of an old factory there, and there might be useful parts inside. As she walked, the modification wrench in her hand was shaking, and she was humming some messy tunes in her mouth. It seemed to be in a good mood, but I was always a little uneasy and I always felt that this trip would not be too smooth. After about an hour left, we arrived at the ruins. The old factory in front of me was even more broken than the one I had been to before. The wall was half collapsed, and the ground was covered with scattered steel tendons and gravel, and the air was filled with a strange smell of motor oil mixed with rot. Leah, familiar with the road, took me through several piles of dangerous bones, and came to a semi-collapsed warehouse entrance, pointing to it, saying, I have been here a few times. There are some old-age mechanical bones in it, so I should be able to find something. But be careful, I heard that there are no strange creatures nearby, so don't be bitten by accident. I clicked my head, my heart tightened, held the crowbar tightly around my waist, and followed her in. The warehouse was pitch black, with only a few beams of sunlight leaking from the top of the hole, so you could barely see the way. There were overturned shelves and broken parts, and there were a few raw iron barrels piled up in the corners of the wall, emitting a pungent smell. Leah squatted down and began to search for something that could be used. I was also helping around, sweeping my eyes across every corner, trying to find something worthwhile in the picture. After about 10 minutes, I picked up a small piece of circuit board and several wires that were almost fully functional. Just as I was about to plug it into the rag bag, the sound of the core suddenly echoed in my ears, and it was still the cold language. I detected abnormal energy fluctuations, and I suggest you evacuate immediately. Abnormal energy fluctuations? What does it mean? I muttered in a low voice, my heart thumped, and I looked around, but I didn't see anything. Leah heard me talking to herself, looked up at me, and asked with a brow, what are you muttering about? Isn't there really something wrong with it? It's nothing, I snatched my hand, there's a little bit of a match, let's finish it quickly. She snorted and continued to bury her head without saying much. But I felt more and more panic in my heart, and I always felt something was staring at us in secret. At this moment, a deep roar suddenly came from the depths of the valley, like a wild animal, which made my skin numb. Leah also heard it and stood up suddenly. The wrench in her hand was tightly clamped and said in a low voice, "A strange creature. Hide." I didn't think too much, so Lima followed her to squat behind a collapsed shelf, holding her breath, staring at the direction of the sound. The roar was getting closer and closer, accompanied by heavy footsteps, as if some big guy was approaching. Soon, a huge figure walked out from the depths of the warehouse. The thing looked like a strange wild dog, but its body was larger than a motorcycle. It was full of twisted sarcoma, green mucus dripped in its mouth, and strange red light in its eyes. I felt a sudden turn in my heart. This is not something I can deal with, even if I have an exoskeleton. I can't help it. Leah gritted her teeth and said in a low voice, "You're going to die a radiant dog. This thing is thick and thick, so we have to find a way to escape." She took out a small, self-made smoke from her pocket, threw it at the monster's foot, and then pulled me and ran to the other end of the warehouse. The smoke exploded and a pungent white smoke came out, which temporarily slammed the monster's visual line, but the roar did not stop, but became even more irritable, and the sound of his feet shook the ground. I kept following Leah with the remaining exoskeleton's strength, but I knew in my heart that I would have been caught up with me if I ran this way. The sound of the movie core sounded again. It is recommended to use the terrain to create obstacles to extend the pursuit speed. There is a collapsed structure on the right side of the front, which can guide the enemy into it. Collapsed structure? I gasped and saw a pile of half-collapsed iron racks on the right, which seemed to fall down at any time. I gritted my teeth and shouted to Leah, "Run right. Let it over." Although she didn't understand why I said this, she still heard me and turned to the right. The strange dog indeed chased after it, and its huge body hit the iron frame and creaked. Finally, after we ran over, the iron frame collapsed and hit it, making a deafening roar. "It's done!" Leah gasped and grinned, but she didn't last for 2 seconds. The pile of gravel behind her suddenly started to move again. The monster was not dead and crawled out from the iron rack. Although she was injured, she still rushed towards us. My heart sank, and I gritted my teeth and said, "Run. Don't turn around." We rushed out of the warehouse one after another. The sun made my eyes hurt, but I couldn't see it at all. The roar behind me was getting closer and closer, and I could even feel the heat coming from the monster's mouth. At this moment, Leah suddenly stopped and took out a modified gun from her waist. She turned around and shot it in just a few strokes. Although it was useless, it at least slowed down the thing. She yelled at me, "Put on the exoskeleton quickly, we will score and run, otherwise we will all be done." I didn't have time to hesitate, so I tightly put on the exoskeleton and rushed in the other direction with the remaining force. Leah ran in the opposite direction, shouting in her mouth, "See you at the camp in half an hour. Don't die." I gritted my teeth and didn't reply, and there was only one thought in my brain, live. After running for about 10 minutes, the roar behind me finally ran a little far away. I stopped by a broken wall and gasped, and the exoskeleton's display began to light up again, warning that the power is about to be exhausted. I was so sad that I could only drag the pile of broken copper wires and move forward. Fortunately, I didn't encounter any more danger. After half an hour, I was wandering back to the camp. Leah was already waiting at the entrance. Her body was covered in dust and her face was not very good looking, but at least she was not injured. "Are you still alive?" She glanced at me and snorted, "You're lucky. The monster didn't catch up with me, probably ran away. The parts were a little bit broken, but not enough. I'll have to go there again tomorrow." "Go?" I smiled bitterly and slammed my head. I don't want to touch that thing again. But I also knew in my heart that if I didn't repair the exoskeleton, I was a moving target on the wasteland, so I could only stick to my head. In the next few days, Leah and I went to the nearby ruins a few more times. Although we were worried every time, fortunately, we didn't encounter any marijuana troubles again and the parts were a little bit clean. The exoskeleton's power gradually recovered to about 60%. Although the fighting function is still gone, it can at least make me run faster and avoid dangers. Leah became more and more curious about the existence of the movie core. She tried to ask me from time to time, but I couldn't tell that the secret was too big, so she might cause trouble when she said it. Just when I thought my life would be a little more stable, I still came to the door. That night, a low engine sound suddenly came from the camp, followed by a few rough shouts, and the guard's gun sounded. My heart sank, and I stood up and pulled out of the tent. Sure enough, I saw a group of plunderers riding into the camp with a modified motorcycle. The guy in the head was wearing a high-level mechanical exoskeleton, a claw-shaped logo on his chest plaque, and an old gas mask on his face, which looked like a wild beast. Iron Claw Grave. Leah hid beside me and said in a low voice, "This guy is one of the overlords on the soil." I heard that I was also looking for the old brain system. It was probably slamming your exoskeleton. I felt a moment in my heart. I didn't expect this guy to come here by himself. I guess he heard some sound and came to the core of the shadow. What should I do with the movie core? I asked in a low voice, flying in my brain. The enemy's combat capability is far beyond the current equipment capabilities. It is recommended to evacuate immediately to avoid head-on conflicts. The sound of the movie nuclear was still so cold, but I knew in my heart that I couldn't run far, and the iron-clawed man had already killed the camp. Iron Claw Grave jumped off the motorcycle and glanced at the camping ground. His voice was as low as Thunderbolt. I heard that there was a boy who had picked up a good thing and carried the old brain system. Supply it, I will kill you, otherwise this broken place will become a ruin tonight. His subordinates lifted up their weapons and their guns were facing us. The atmosphere was as strong as if they were about to explode at any time. I gritted my teeth and thought in my heart that it would be impossible to hand over the exoskeleton, but I guess I wouldn't live tonight. Leah pulled my sleeve and said in a low voice, "Don't be stunned, we have to run. I know the path can be out of the camp." I pointed my head, and while the iron claws were not completely surrounded, Lima followed her toward the back of the camp. The sound of guns and cries behind me was simultaneous, and I swept over us. With the help of the exoskeleton, I hid for a while, but my shoulders were still damaged, and the pain was so cold. Leah took me into a narrow path, ran for a long time, and finally left the pursuit, but we all knew that this was just a temporary moment, and the iron claws would not give up easily. What should I do next? Leah gasped and stared at me. What secret is hidden in your exoskeleton? The iron claws are not easy to mess with. If he targets you, we will be done. I hesitated for a moment, finally gritted my teeth and briefly told the story of the Shadow Core. It was so far now that I couldn't stop it. After hearing this, Leah's eyes were as if they were copper-shaped, and after a while he said, "You kid can really cause trouble. This brain is probably a war weapon from the old era. If the Iron Claw wants it, it probably wants to consolidate the whole wasteland. We have to think of a way to destroy it and use it to counterattack." It's been destroyed? I felt a little nervous. Although the Shadow Core came, I had saved me several times. After it was destroyed, I was not sure about living on the wasteland. But Leah said it right, the iron claws are too dangerous, and it is a pity to keep the movie nuclear. At this moment, the voice of the movie core suddenly sounded, "The destruction system will be exposed to the destruction program, and it is recommended that users reconsider it. My mission has not been completed yet, and the secret base in the wasteland core still needs to be started." Secret base? I murmured in a low voice, and asked, "Where is that? Can I solve the threat of the iron claws after I go?" The ultimate technology of the old era can be stored in the base of the wasteland core, which can be used to rebuild or destroy civilization. The specific content needs to be unblocked after reaching the location. The answer of movie nuclear was still so vague, but it sounded like a little hope. I told Leah about this, and she thought about it and gritted her teeth and said, "Okay, take a look. Go to the core area and see what this brain wants to fuck. If you can find any weapon, you might be able to fuck the iron claws." In the next few days, Leah and I began to search for resources from all over the world, repair exoskeletons, clean anti-radiation equipment, and also heard the route in the core area from some old scavengers in the camp. The iron-clawed people kept searching for us nearby, but fortunately we hid quickly and were not caught at the moment. Although the exoskeleton's fighting function is still gone, its movement ability has been restored to 80%, which can at least allow me to run faster. On the day of the outing, it was as if it was going to rain, and the wind of the wasteland made people's face hurt. Leah and I were carrying rag bags and wearing simple anti-radio suits, and headed towards the core. The road was full of dangers, and the roars of different creatures kept coming up, and occasionally I could hear the engine sound of the snatchers from afar, but I couldn't tell the silence in my heart. Maybe it was because I knew that no matter what the result was, there was always a conclusion on this trip. After about a week of leaving, we finally arrived at the core. This place is even more terrifying than I thought. The ground is covered with black radiant slag, and the air is filled with a pungent smell. The buildings far away seem to be swept by some giant weapon, full of scars. The sound of the movie nuclear coronary is now reflected. The target is 5 kilometers ahead. It is recommended to be vigilant and detect multiple high-energy reactions. High-energy reaction? Leah asked me with eyebrows, what is this brain saying? I guess what a dangerous thing is. I smiled bitterly, prepare it, I won't be playing around right away. We walked forward carefully, our eyes swept every corner, and our weapons were tightly clenched, for fear that something would suddenly come out. Finally, in the middle of a huge ruin, we saw the secret base of the movie Nuclear Corporation, a giant metal building half buried underground, with a surface full of traces of radiating corrosion, but the mark on the door can also show the technological style of the old era. The voice of the movie core echoed again, arriving at the target location and starting the final certification program. User Kane Iron Blade, will you enter? I hesitated for a moment, looked at Leah, she pointed her head and said in a low voice, go in, you have reached this point, there is no way out. I gritted my teeth and walked to the door in front of the door in my exoskeleton. The display screen on my breastplate suddenly lit up, and a blue light shot out and swept over the door. Then, a low bird sounded and opened slowly. There was a huge underground space inside, filled with old consoles and mechanical slaughter, and the air was filled with the smell of sparks. The sound of the movie core became a little quick. The core system is located in front of it, and all data can be unlocked after activation. But warning, when starting, it will touch the base defense system, and it is recommended to prepare for the battle. Are you ready for a fight? My heart sank, but I didn't have time to think about it anymore, dragging the exoskeleton and Leah deeper. At the bottom, a huge core device appeared in front of us, looking like a giant server with a faint blue light on the surface. The sound of the movie corp, add to the system and start data transmission. I followed its instructions and connected the exoskeleton to the core device. A bunch of incomprehensible symbols began to jump on the display. The sound of the subsequent movie core became low, the data is unlocked. Base function, the ultimate weapon controls the middle, the proxy is Sky Start. Is it activated? God is coming? Leah's face changed when she heard the name. It doesn't sound like something good, Kyan, don't come around. But there was a kind of impulse in my heart. If this weapon could help me slap off my iron claws, it might be safe and sound. I hesitated for a moment, and finally gritted my teeth and said, start. At this moment, the base suddenly trembled, the police sounded harshly, and a group of mechanical guards diamonded out of the wall, and the guns matched us. The sound of the movie core was still so cold. The defense system has been activated, so it is recommended to counterattack immediately. I gritted my teeth and relied on the exoskeleton's movement ability to avoid a few flashes. Leah also took out her gun and shot it, but we all know that if she continues to fight, it will be too early to end. At this moment, a low engine sound suddenly came from outside the base, and the sound of Iron Claw Grave sounded, finish you, boy. Hand over your brain, or I will blow up the place flat. His subordinates rushed in, and the sound of guns and explosions were in a row, and the scene was as chaotic as the ground. My heart sank, knowing that there is really no way out this time. The voice of the movie Nuclear sounded again, the weapon charge is completed. Will it be released? I gritted my teeth and looked at Leah. She pointed at her head and said in a low voice, let's go. I took a deep breath and said to the movie Nuclear, let's go. A dazzling blue light shot out from the core device, and then the entire base started to quake. The iron-clawed people and mechanical guards were swallowed by the blue light in an instant, and the explosion sounded so loud that my ears were almost lit. "It's done." Leah gasped and grinned, but I didn't feel much joy in my heart, because the sound of the movie nuclear sounded again. "The weapon release of the sky has been completed, the base self-destruction program is activated, and it is recommended to evacuate immediately." Self-destroying? My heart sank, and Lima pulled Leah outward. The explosion sound behind her was getting closer and closer, and the heat caused people's face to hurt. We ran desperately, finally pulled out of the base at the last moment, watching the metal building turn into a group of fireballs behind us and collapse. The sky in the wasteland was still so gray, and the radiant wind shaved across the wasteland. Leah and I sat down against a broken stone head, gasping for breath. The iron claws were dead, and the base of the shadow core was gone, but I didn't feel relaxed in my heart, because the danger of the wasteland was not over, and there were more plunderers and mutants waiting for us. What should I do next? Leah wiped her sweat and asked me. I looked at the horizon far away and said in a low voice, "Living, finding a place to settle down, maybe I can get some more good things." She hummed, without saying anything, but there was a lot of hope in her eyes. Although the exoskeleton's display darkens, it will occasionally flash, as if reminding me that the secret of the shadow core may not be fully revealed. I gritted my teeth, stood up, dragged the pile of broken copper wires, and walked towards the unknown. The road to the wasteland is still long, and this journey is far away,